I've been here 25 years. I've never had to think about my personal safety, ever.
Or your kid, or your wife?
No, it's not something we discuss.
Meet Jeremy Sargent, a Brit who first visited China in 1979 and returned 2 decades later to settle there. Now he runs a law firm and a popular bar chain called Happy Monk. While walking through Guangzhou, Jeremy shared insights about China's social credit system, the hidden reasons behind the country's strict control, and whether China is the most technologically advanced country in the world. I'm Max Chernov, your insider to Expat Life. Doba.
You read about this a lot in the media and so on about, this control in China and it's all controlled. It is controlled, but there is a reason for that, and that is to preserve stability and the growth of China on such a scale. Think of the upheaval to people's lives when things change at that speed, at that scale, and the fact that with that number of people they've managed to keep this ship sailing peacefully and with generally a lot of stability is something the whole world should say that's pretty good for everyone, right? An unstable China would be disastrous for all of us, especially now with supply chain and manufacturing and so much of that rooted here. You imagine if the Chinese supply chain collapsed overnight. Yeah, can you imagine the impact? Just the cheap goods that come out of China, the cost of things, the availability of supply. There's no supply chain. There's no manufacturing supply chain like this anywhere now. If China destabilized in any way, it would hit everybody. Almost everyone in the world would be directly impacted. So preserving that stability is the absolute bedrock of this project to modernize China.
What else foreigners, Westerners don't get about China?
There's a lot in the media, in the Western media about China, which there's a lot of good stuff as well. There's a lot of very well-written articles in the Western media. I mean, the term Western media is so generic. You've got such a range of different media.
Let's say media from UK and US.
Generally, if I'm going to generalize, there's a lot of negativity about China in the Western media. And what I see from somebody who is living this and breathing it from the inside for so many years, it's not that what's written is completely incorrect, but it's the context, or it's like looking at a whole big picture and picking out this. This might be true, but it doesn't explain the whole picture. It doesn't also put forward the context that this happened in. Whereas somebody who's not been here, doesn't understand China, etc., they read this and then they read that again and that again. They start to build this opinion formed by this that, China's like this or China's like that. There are many people in the West who won't even come here. Business people who will not even go to Hong Kong for a meeting. They're afraid.
I mean, they're scared to come.
They're scared to set foot here.
Oh.
So they've got this idea that, it's dangerous and, it's politically so tight that if you're not careful, you're going to get into trouble. You might get dragged off one day. So this is kind of nonsense.
Even business people who travel the world.
There's plenty of people who won't come here for meetings.
Wow.
Yeah, especially some of the Americans. I've seen it with my own clients. People who, they jump onto this sort of media portrayal and they build up a picture which is not entirely accurate. It's not black and white wrong, but it's not very representative. So I think, let me put it another way, a lot of people who do finally come here, it's very common for people who do come here and work and spend time here to go, well, this isn't what I expected. Really, I really expected something different. And now I've been here for 3 months. This doesn't really resonate with what I thought before I came here. So this is one thing. I think, secondly, sort of the convenience of day-to-day life here. What China's managed to do in the last, especially 10 years, is really integrate technology into day-to-day living. So now with your phone, your WeChat, your apps, you can kind of do everything. Right? It's been cashless for many years here, but organizing your life, your tickets, your this, your that, it can all be done on a screen now. Transport. I came back yesterday from Hong Kong. It was an hour on the high-speed train. It was so seamless, the whole experience. Going to airports, getting on planes, it's so different to what it used to be. And I think it's probably, particularly on the scale it's at, it's probably now more advanced in that sense than anywhere I've been. This sort of embracing technology and building that into our daily lives. And that's what they've done very well, in my opinion, here. So this is something that people who arrive go, wow, I didn't expect this.
Yeah.
They built 10, 12 kilometers of high-speed rail per day since 2012. That's a lot of railways.
That's a lot, yeah.
It's 100 kilometers a week, almost, for the last 10, 12 years.
Yeah. Some countries are struggling to
build one line.
Yeah.
But they can do it here for lots of reasons.
I'm originally from Russia, and in Moscow at some point Moscow developed big time, maybe start developing 15, 20 years ago. And some of the events that happened, it was so it was a lot of shops, small shops, some of the private shops all over the town. And then overnight, they just cleaned it up. They actually physically removed, yeah.
Because they were illegal or what?
Part of them was legal, part of them was illegal, but they wanted to clean up the city and just organize it, and they just did it. It's impossible to do it in the US, for example. In the US, you know why the railway system is not developing? Because they cannot agree with all the small little towns and all the property real estate owners to get out of their way.
Challenge it. Same in England, yeah, exactly.
But here, on one hand, it's not the democratic country, but on the other hand, it's so effective, with their decisions and with the execution.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. Absolutely. Getting things done in China, things happen very quickly here. To build a Chinese airport from start to finish is quicker than just the planning for an airport, even in India.
Yeah.
Right, this is what I've read. So yes, they can come up with an idea, develop it, execute it, deliver it very, very quickly. But it also comes at a price. It's not, the what you talked about in terms of sort of, in the US, UK, individuals relatively have more say on this. So here it tends to look, which is not necessarily a bad thing, at the majority. And back to your earlier question, Max, in terms of what a lot of people in the West don't understand about China, although China is very sort of top-down in its administrative system, it's very layered. You've got your leader, your second, your third, your fourth, going right down to the street level. That being said, and no, it's not a democracy, you don't vote these people in and out, but they are highly accountable, and it's become very accountable based on performance. So if you're a medium-level government official in Guangzhou here, or even a street official looking after this street here, if you don't deliver what you've pledged, you might lose your job. If you screw up, you go down for it. And the Chinese government is constantly seeking feedback, gauging opinion, understanding how communities, how people feel about what's going on. And if people are feeling a certain way about something, they will take action. So in that sense, there is direct accountability. If you're the Guangzhou Environmental Protection Department and you pledge to clean up the air or plant 10 more trees down this street, if you don't do it, you've screwed up. And you will suffer the consequences of that. So there is that accountability, it's sort of executive-led accountability. What I feel sometimes talking to friends back in UK and other countries, that side of China doesn't make headlines in the media. People don't realise, and they think that China's very much a top-down, you do what you're told and that's the end of it. But it's not that simple. It really isn't. So if you see public services, for example, in terms of accessibility, quality, at least in the big cities like here, it's changed immeasurably. And you're likely to get a phone call asking for your feedback on a delivery of a public service. If you go to a hospital, for example, they will phone you and say, well, how was your experience? They want people to feedback, and they will plan accordingly. I mean, it's a bit simplistic what I'm saying, but that's how it generally works. And I've seen that even running a business like this. If there are complaints, if residents complain about noise, for example, or let's say, in Touchwood it hasn't happened, but let's say there was a food poisoning complaint, or someone complained that we were selling a fake alcohol, and there is a lot of fake alcohol on the market, or somebody complained about noise one night, it would be investigated, followed up. The complainant would receive a report back. They can then take this report to the higher level if they're not happy with the way it's been dealt with.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's pretty accountable. But in the sense that in the West, we understand you vote in your local councillor or your MP or whatever. No, it's not like that. It's a different form of accountability. But there is accountability. That's something that is often not highlighted, let's put it that way. People don't have that idea that this, and I think that's one reason China's modernization has gone pretty well in most senses, is because of that accountability. There is almost an unwritten contract between the government and the people. We're going to make things better. Yeah. And if we don't, we're screwing up. We've got no legitimacy left any longer. That works quite well.
Yeah.
Hey guys, just a quick announcement, don't skip. I'll be running a 3-day workshop called Fast Track to Views and Profits on YouTube. If you ever wanted to start your own channel, this is the best way to do it. You will learn how to choose the most profitable niche and how to beat the YouTube algorithm. You're gonna love it, I promise. Link in description, so sign up if it's for you. And now back to the video.
For example, apart from this business, I'm a lawyer as well, and have spent many years dealing with approvals and permits and licensing. That whole process has become very streamlined, at least in the big cities, here, Shenzhen, when we open a new Happy Monk. And it's pretty automated. You submit online, you can track. If they say something's ready on Wednesday morning, it's ready on Wednesday morning. There's no nasty surprises along the way, at least not at the level we operate at. Yeah. And again, I think there's often a sense outside that it's much more arbitrary, let's use that word. Whereas, no, it's follows rules, it's clear, it's well explained, it's really embraced technology, and it gets better every year. So, not to say that everything's easy, and doing business here and so on, that's a kind of separate conversation, but on the accountability point, that's a point I want to make loud and clear, that the state shows a high degree of accountability to the people, and it's that keeps this system running. Without that, I don't know what would happen here, even though it's not a democratic system in the traditional sense of one man, one vote. No, it's not that at all. But you're in the government, you deliver for me, and if you screw up, you're out. It's more like that. That's why they're so scared. That's why if there's a big road accident, panic everywhere, because somebody's going to be held accountable. The local officials are going to be extremely scared. And if there's a noise complaint, we have had them, like most bars, and if we get a noise complaint, the local authorities will we know them and they're friendly, and they'll say, look, this makes our life really difficult, stop it. So that's how accountability works.
I also want to ask about the social score, because my friends, when I told them I'm going to China, some of them have been to China, this social score
social credit system.
Social credit from Black Mirror. What parts of people say about is true and what part is false?
I've seen reports that say if you cross the road at the wrong place, your social credit history will be affected.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this. In the UK, if you want to borrow money or so on, they can do a background credit check on you. The only time I've really heard it mentioned is in relation to people who have gone bankrupt. So if you've officially gone bankrupt in China, or you are a debtor, you may end up with a low credit score. But that's kind of not that different from anywhere else in concept.
I don't think it's different, actually. So if your credit history is bad in the US, you're screwed. You cannot get a bank loan. You cannot get anything.
Right. So I think that's similar here. If you wanted a bank loan, they would check your credit history here, and that's what my understanding of how the social credit system, at least at this stage, works. I have read reports that it goes very deep into everything you do in life and watches everything you say and do, and I've not heard or seen anyone affected by that. No one talks about this.
It's like your wife, for example.
Yeah, she's never mentioned it. She's not aware. I've asked her.
She's afraid to mention, or
she's never experienced she's never heard of it. But like in the US, the UK, and other countries, if you have a bad financial record, yes, you will have a low credit rating. So if you want to borrow money, if you want to open a bank account and so on, they will check this. China is a highly controlled society, but I haven't seen it manifested in the ways that some people fear.
How about a lot of CCTV? Does it bother you?
Well,
do you feel restricted?
Yes and no. I mean, no more or less than anywhere else, really. I don't think per capita, I don't have the data, but I suspect CCTV coverage is pretty similar in many cities in the world. I know in the UK it is.
In London, it's actually, I
One
think
of
it's
the
the highest concentration in the world.
It's very high, yeah.
For the city.
Yeah. So in China, in Guangzhou, it's also high. That's the world we live in. And face recognition is another one. And it's something we just can't avoid.
But I think,
do I like it? No.
I think this one actually, in China or everywhere in the world, it knows about you a lot. So that's your CCTV.
Yeah, your phone is.
Yeah.
And look, at the end of the day, if they want to know what you're doing where you are, of course they can. And there's the technology here to do it.
Yeah.
And I think all over the world, to varying degrees, this is the case. But China is definitely a society which is more highly controlled.
Yeah.
For sure. And in England, we don't even have ID cards.
Yeah.
Right, there's no ID card. But if they want to find out who you're talking to and what you're doing, I'm sure they can. That's how the police often solve crimes, right? What I do find is, because of this, and this is a huge topic which is much bigger than this interview, but because of this, there's less, I think, division in terms of politics. It's not like in, the UK, US, etc. Things often feel very divided, and this is always a dominant thing.
Yeah.
With people, and people run the risk of being cancelled and accused of this and that. You don't really feel that in the same way here. It's not saying people don't have opinions, but society doesn't feel divided in that same way. It's fairly harmonious, it feels. The WeChat communication is not full of toxic communication, cancelling somebody or this or that. I quite like that. It's quite peaceful. Doesn't mean I like censorship, but it's all interrelated. And it's like anything in life, you lose something and you might gain something as well. So you get what I'm saying. It's not all a bad or good story.
What's the area, this one?
So now we're in an area called Shamian.
Yeah.
And Shamian has a very important historical context. This was the part of town in the 19th century where the foreign traders came to Guangzhou.
Yeah.
And remember, Guangzhou's been a trading city for a long time. And so this is where many of the European traders were allowed to set up their businesses. And so if you look at a lot of the buildings around here, there are buildings like you might even find the old Russian consulate building here, banks, customs buildings, and so forth. There's a Swiss consulate, the old Swiss consulate building was here, churches. So it's very European style. You've got British style, French style, and so on. And now it's very much a kind of tourist spot.
Yeah.
They preserved the trees, which I think look amazing.
Yeah.
And many of the buildings have been kept and increasingly restored and renovated, and they look pretty good. Some of them have become businesses. You'll see Starbucks down here. You'll see coffee shops, hotels. This is a little island, a sand island, some water around us on the Pearl River. So if you are interested in the old Canton trade, this is a really important place. And look at these trees. They're just beautiful, right?
Yeah. Is China generally safe country?
Yeah, certainly from what I feel and see in the big cities, absolutely. I mean, there is crime here, but your personal safety is amazing here. It's similar to Singapore. You don't think about it.
Yeah.
I've been here 25 years. I've never had to think about my personal safety ever.
Or your kid or your wife.
No, it's not something we discuss. What time you're coming home and where you're walking alone at night. And that's not to say there probably are areas of town or the country where people may be a bit more reluctant.
Was it also safe like 30 years ago when you start first coming here? Before CCTV thing?
To be honest, it was probably even safer. So when I was a student in China in the 80s, there was less opportunity because everyone was in a very similar situation. It was before the advent of private business. Everyone was kind of in the same boat.
Yeah.
Everyone was paid the same amount. They lived in similar conditions.
Yeah.
And in those days, it was incredibly safe traveling around China and living here. Again, it was something that you didn't talk about. As a student in China then, it felt like the safest place in the world.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, with the opening up and the economy, it's created inequality. So there are some very wealthy people in China. There are also many people in China who are not so wealthy. So wherever you have inequality, then there is opportunity for crime. Financial crime is quite big, fraud. But on personal safety, that's not an issue. You say Canton to people, they know what Canton is. You can find one of the oldest mosques outside of the Middle East in this city, a big French cathedral, and then this area in particular.
So that was built like end of 19th century, beginning of 20th century by Europeans.
This really happened more in the mid to late 1800s.
Okay, got it, yeah.
And at that time there were the European trading houses here. There were what we call the 13 factories, which is in another part of town. And this was really the hub for it. Yeah. Because there were a lot of restrictions then on what the foreign traders, where they could be, where they could set up, what they were allowed to do. But this area was kind of a concession, if you like. Many of the Chinese cities have these port cities have these concessions, and you can see some of this kind of architecture. Canton, old Canton, Guangzhou is a really good example of this. Yeah. A lot of people, when they come in, they're like, wow, we never expected this. It's pretty cool, eh?
Is there a Chinese dream? Like, that was American dream. Some people argue that American dream is dead. But here feels like if you want to make money, go make money. That's the thing that people actually appreciate study first, like learning. It's like in Confucianism, right? And the second one is making money is not a bad thing. Like in some societies, it's perceived more like a more negative thing.
Yes.
But here, it's like, go, do it, kind of thing.
So there is something called the Chinese dream, 中国梦, which is a little bit borrowed from the American dream idea, but you'll see slogans of the Chinese dream dotted around. That very much touches on what we talked about earlier today, and that is a prosperous, stable, peaceful country where people can thrive, where they're part of this society and living in peace and harmony and everything else. So that would be the Chinese dream. The American dream is not completely dissimilar. The two are not. I think the American dream is, the idea of that really came from immigrants moving to the US in the early days.
Yeah.
And the US was a place you could make it. And it still is in many respects. China's more, the focus is not on settlers and immigrants from overseas, but it's more from internally. Under the leadership of the party, let's rejuvenate and make China a stable, peaceful, prosperous, leading nation. That's the Chinese dream.
But the core idea is, I'm an individual, like I can get rich, my family will benefit from it, like my social circle, my group, or it's like I'm a part of the big China, and I'm getting like richer, better, more successful, and the China also.
So that's a really good point, and maybe that is one distinction between that and the American dream, and it's possibly a bit more like the second thing you said, and increasingly so. It's not just about me, I'm going to get rich.
Yeah.
It's about I'm part of a society which is rejuvenating, developing, and I'm part of this.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a wider social aspect to it. I think the American dream is very much centered on the individual. An American
For sure.
culture is based around the individual, much more so than here.
Yeah.
There's definitely been a shift in government policy to kind of rein in that individualistic, unfettered pursuit of wealth, which frankly had been running for many years to incredible levels.
Yeah.
You've probably read about some of those stories.
Yeah.
So in that sense, there is a bit of a difference.
Yeah.